Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It's your guy Boulanger, and up next, we're going to complete and answer the question: who's responsible for the Baltimore Ravens' current debacle? I changed that word debacle out and to replace the word demise, simply because debacle is a more fitting context. A debacle simply can be considered a failure, okay? And it's a failure, a sudden failure, in fact, typically done in public. And so what we'll see is that the Baltimore Ravens' current ills lie at the feet or in the lap of basically one person. Okay. Now I know collectively there is a lot of people that play a part, you know, in the failure of an organization, or the failures, let's say it that way, of an organization. And we can certainly be honest enough as fans, and then even those who check the GM out who are not fans of the Baltimore Ravens, we can certainly acknowledge that the Baltimore Ravens have had some failures. And they're clear, and they're in public, and everybody has had their fair share of consumption, whether it's national news, YouTube, excuse me, reporting, whatever it is. We've all digested a lot of the Baltimore Ravens issues, whether it's the contract with Lamar, lack of talent at wide receiver, um, bad coaching, the dismissal of Greg Roman, whatever it is or was. We've certainly had our fair share of consumption over the last 2 years, 2.5 years. And I think that all of that has come to a boiling point, to the point where it's spilling over now. And so somebody has to be responsible in order for this mess to be cleaned up. And the mess to being cleaned up, I'm saying and suggesting that whoever is responsible, not because I say in this video, but whoever is responsible at the end of the 2023 season must depart. Okay. So let's look at some culprits. So let me share my screen with you guys. You know, guys, I believe in, showing you what I tell you. I don't believe in just giving you my opinion and not having some information to back up what I'm thinking or my take. So this is the question we're trying to answer. Who's responsible for the Baltimore Ravens debacle? Okay. And so who is responsible? Who are the culprits? Okay. We got Eric Decosta, EDC, we got John Harbaugh, we have Lamar Jackson, and we have Steve B. Okay, or Steve Biscotti or Biscotti, who is the owner. Now, in the video, you guys responded to about who was responsible. It was a 5-minute, 6-minute video, and we just kind of identified the culprits. And overwhelmingly, kind of the consensus, Stevie B, the owner, he was the responsible party. And I know that that's sometimes the low-hanging fruit, that having what is believed to be a cheap owner uh is the responsible party. But I'm gonna submit something to you today that says Steve Biscotti is not the culprit. Um, and I'm gonna point out as we get started who I believe the culprit is, and then I'm gonna lay out the case. So with no further delay, let's get it. So of these culprits, we could say John Harbaugh is responsible for the lack of success on the field. We could say Lamar Jackson is also co-responsible for some lack of success, and we understand that he has not had the adequate weaponry. But we won't belabor that point. We could say Steve B, the owner, is responsible simply because he writes the checks, or signs the checks, better yet, and he's cheap and doesn't have the money to put in escrow. He doesn't really care about winning. He just want to make money, which is all business owners. And so we could say all those guys, but I'm gonna point squarely at Eric Decosta. I think Eric Decosta, EDC, is 95% responsible for the Baltimore Ravens' current failures. And more than the owner, more than Lamar Jackson, and more than John Harbaugh. That means the other 5% is on those other three guys. Okay, we can parse that out later. But let me show you why EDC is responsible. EDC is the general manager, correct? And we understand that the general manager is responsible for putting a team together, retaining talent, and bringing in talent. Bringing in talent is in the draft or in free agency. Retaining talent is keeping your own guys, and building a team is, simply, making sure all the pieces fit together. We won't argue any of those points, but he's also responsible for managing the money, knowing whose contract's coming up, knowing whose contract is coming to an end, knowing that if you redo a contract and move the money around, how is that going to impact guys getting signed later on. And so EDC is responsible, even if he has a cheap owner. Let me show you why. Okay. Now, let me tell you up front, this is going to be about a 35-minute video. So you may have to watch it in two parts, but I promise it's going to be worth viewing, especially for those of you who are in Raven Nation. Okay. So let me show you what EDC has done and what has caused this failure. Okay. So first up, we're going to look at Marcus Peters. We understand that Marcus Peters was traded for, and in December of 2019, Marcus Peters signed an extension, 3 years, $42 million, which averages out about $14 million a year. Now, we understand that the per year average doesn't always mean base salary and how it impacts the cap. But what we do understand that in 2019, what would EDC already have known about his roster? He would have known that he has a young quarterback at that time, would have been about 22, 23 years old, who was headed for the MVP. Okay. And within a 3-year time frame, his young quarterback would have been eligible for a contract extension. You follow me? All right. So that's the first contract EDC signed that cost major money. All right. Let me show you another contract. The next contract up, and these all in order of date and year. Okay. He signed Marlon Humphreys to an extension. If we look at Marlon Humphrey's deal, okay, he signed a deal worth $97 million. Okay. That comes out to about a per year average, roughly 17 to 19 million, depending on how the cap goes up or down, as far as how the contract is structured. But what does that mean? In 2020, that's when he signed him, October 1st of 2020. What would EDC have already known? EDC would have already known that I have a 23-year-old MVP quarterback from the previous year, right? That's what he would have already known when he signed Marlon Humphrey. You follow what I'm saying? You see, Lamar Jackson would have came out in 2018. His rookie year would have been 2018, ending in 19. His MVP year would have been 19, ending in 20, early 2020. So that means when Marlon Humphrey was signed and made the highest paid cornerback in the league, he would have known that he would have a pending contract extension due for his young MVP quarterback, right? Let's look at another contract. Ronnie Stanley. Ronnie Stanley was signed in the same month as Marlon Humphrey. What did he sign Ronnie Stanley to? A 5-year, $98 million deal on October 30th of 2020, which means he would have given basically $200 million in contracts, making his cornerback and his left tackle the highest paid at their position in the league within 29 days of one another. Okay. What would he have known is going to happen at the end of this season? The 2020 to 2021 season, 2021 meaning early that year, would have been ending that season. What would he have known? He would know that that would be the end of Lamar Jackson's 3rd year, which makes him contract eligible. But with knowing that, he still gave away $200 million to a cornerback and a left tackle. And so if we just do these contracts and we add in Marcus Peters, he would have already committed basically an annual salary, he would have given away, in whole dollar amounts, about $200 million, knowing that he had a MVP quarterback coming up, right? Let's keep looking. Let's keep looking. Then we go and we look at Mark Andrews. Okay. Mark Andrews signed a 4-year extension worth $56 million. Okay. And he did this deal in September of what year? 2021. This would have been Mark Andrews' 4th year, and it would be the beginning of Lamar Jackson's 4th year. At this point in time, what would EDC have already known? Okay. EDC would have already known that, hey, I got a young quarterback who won an MVP, have not given him a lot of weaponry, but it's important to go ahead and lock him up, especially when I've already signed 2 corners, a left tackle, and a tight end, all good players, but not a franchise quarterback. I've already dedicated $300 million in whole dollar amount, meaning whole dollar contracts to these guys. And at this point, the guaranteed money will be roughly approaching $200 million. Okay. So you've signed 4 guys without getting your franchise quarterback done. Their total contracts are running at $300 million. Guaranteed money is approaching $200 million, but you haven't found a way to get your MVP quarterback done. All right. Let's keep looking. Who's next up? Marcus Williams. Marcus Williams was brought in the 2022 offseason, which would have been last offseason. Okay. And he signed a 5-year, $70 million deal with the Baltimore Ravens. Okay. And we know he signed this deal last offseason. All right. And so what would he know, right? What would EDC know at the time that this deal is being signed? He would know that I have not signed my quarterback. That's what he would know. He would also know that Marcus Williams' deal would take them to a $370 million total contract amount and takes them over $200 million in guarantees. I do all of that and have not signed my franchise quarterback yet. And I'm going back and forth with him, over probably a 5th year or a 6th year, and tens of millions of dollars. But I've saw fit to sign 2 corners, a left tackle, a tight end, and a safety. Okay. But let's not stop there. This is all under EDC's leadership. Okay. Next up, ROQUAN Smith. Now, we know that they traded for ROQUAN Smith in season. And even though they traded for him in season, what did they do? Before the season was over, they signed ROQUAN Smith to a 5-year, $100 million contract. Now, this is in 2022. Lamar Jackson was already hurt at this point. But what would they have known? Now, no, let me make a point. All those other deals were done prior to Lamar Jackson getting hurt at the end of the 2021-2022 season. So injury was not an issue at that point in time. Okay. Was not an issue. So now you go get ROQUAN Smith and you give him $100 million, which takes your whole dollar contract amount to over $470 million. So about $500 million in whole dollar contracts. And it takes you over the $260 million, $265 million guarantees. Now I go get all of these players. I get them signed to extensions, but I didn't see fit to lock up my franchise quarterback. Now, none of these guys went into a franchise situation. You never heard about the franchise tag for Ronnie Stanley that I can remember. You heard about the franchise tag for ROQUAN Smith a little bit, but that was a debate between who would get it, him or Lamar Jackson. You didn't hear about Marlon Humphrey being franchise tagged. You did not hear about Marcus Peters being franchise tagged. All of these guys got deals done totaling almost $500 million, over $260 million in fully guaranteed money. But you could not find a way to sign your franchise quarterback. Oh, you guys may say at this point, well, Leon Boulanger, you know what it is Bisciotti wouldn't come off the money. Well, hold it. See, we can't say Bisciotti is cheap or Bisciotti is cheap. Stevie B, let's call him that. We can't say Stevie B is cheap. You know why? Because he would have had to give consent or permission or have an understanding that these are the deals that he's doing. You follow what I'm saying? He had to know 100 million was going to ROQUAN. He had to know 70 million was going to Marcus Williams, 97 million to Marlon Humphrey, 98 million to Ronnie Stanley, 56 million to Mark Andrews, and 42 million to Marcus Peters. See, he would have had to know that. See, if I give you consent, if that's how it happens between the owner and the GM to sign off on $470 million of contracts and over $260 million in guarantees, then that doesn't sound too cheap. This comes down to Eric Decosta signing who he chooses to sign. This comes down to Eric Costa not seeming to have an ability to identify what's more important, a corner or a quarterback, a linebacker or a quarterback, a tight end or a quarterback. See, that's what it comes down to. You see, because all of these guys collectively has not had the same impact as Lamar Jackson. Because although you put ROQUAN, Marlon Humphrey, Marcus Peters, ROQUAN, Marlon Humphreys, Marcus Peters, and Marcus Williams on the same field, it still didn't lead us to a top 5 defense. All of these guys were on the same field at one time this year. It didn't lead us there. And even though you had you guaranteed or locked up Mark Andrews, that's still, he was only one guy. So what I'm pointing out is not only that you paid all these guys with that kind of amount before you paid your quarterback, is that your quarterback would know who got paid before him. And so now you come to your quarterback. Now watch this. Watch this. Let me make this point. And so what would your quarterback recognize? Your quarterback would easily recognize that you made Roquan Smith. Let's go start this now and go backwards. Your quarterback would know that you made Roquan Smith the highest paid linebacker in NFL history. Your quarterback would know you made Marcus Williams, I think at that time, one of the highest paid, top 2, top 3 paid safeties in the whole NFL. Your quarterback, who is not signed, would know that when you paid Marlon Humphrey $97 million, top paid corner in the league. Your quarterback would know that when you paid Ronnie Stanley $98 million, he became the highest paid left tackle in the league, and he's still a top 4 paid left tackle, even though his deal was done almost 4 years ago. When you paid Mark Andrews, his only real weapon, you made him a top 2, top 3 paid tight end in the league. This is what your quarterback would know. So why would your quarterback say, well, let me take a discount? Why would your quarterback think that he should take any less when you had no problem making all these other guys top paid at their position? See, that's why I say EDC is responsible for this. 95% of this is EDC because it's his decision making. Now, am I saying John Harbaugh didn't say, yeah, we need to keep ROQUAN, we need to keep Mark Andrews? No, I'm not saying that at all. But how much the player got, how long their contract is, how much guaranteed money they got, that would be an EDC decision. And so even if Steve Bisciotti was a cheap owner, even if he didn't have the money to put in escrow, This still says there was $470 million in whole dollar money done in deals and over $260 million in guaranteed money, if I did my math correctly. And I may be a little off, but there's still a lot of money. And you did all of that without signing your contract. Now let's go one step deeper. Here's the contract that matters even more than these five that I showed you. Josh Allen's contract. See, we've been belaboring the point that they haven't got a deal done in 2023 at this point. We've been harboring on the fact that they didn't get a deal done last offseason in 2022. But the real issue is not that they didn't get a deal done within the last year. The fact that they didn't get a deal done in 2021 when Josh Allen got his deal done, that's where the real problem lies. Let's take a look at Josh Allen's contract. Josh Allen signed a 6-year extension worth $258 million. That's a whole dollar amount. It came with $150 million in fully guaranteed money. Okay? So, what things do we know about Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson? One, they came out in the same draft, which means they would be eligible for a contract extension when at the same time. Okay? They're both first rounders. And up until this point, okay, let's look at the date. He signed this contract before the start of the 2021 season. Okay? On August 6th. Okay? Before the season. And there was some conversation if Lamar should hold out in 2021 and if he should hold out in 2022, but he didn't. Okay? Josh Allen's contract would have been signed before a Lamar Jackson injury in the last 2 seasons. Josh Allen's contract would have been signed after Lamar Jackson had already won an MVP. Josh Allen's contract would have been signed after Lamar won an MVP and won his first playoff game. So talking about the point that there's no contract done at this point is kind of a null and void point because the deal could have been done all the way back in 2021. And let's go deeper. Now, we've heard this 3-year and 133. Well, so whether it was 3 years and 133 fully guaranteed, whether it was 133 guaranteed on a larger like $250 million deal, because I've also heard that, it doesn't really matter. Because let's do some easy math and easy comparisons. If whatever was guaranteed was around one, I'm talking about the number. I'm not talking about the elevators of a contract where if you get injured, you get this much more guaranteed. I'm not talking about that. But if 133 was the initial contract that was offered, no matter what they offered since that time, 133 is less than 150. What that means is the Buffalo Bills offered more guarantees almost 2 years ago to date than what Lamar Jackson got last offseason. That would mean when in 2021, if Lamar Jackson was in contract talks with the Buffalo Bills, that means if he was offered 133 recently, or more recent, let's say it that way, more recent, because I don't want to debate when and what in the 175, but if he was offered 133 more recent, that means he wasn't offered much at all back in 2021 when it was time for him to get an extension. See, that's why a deal didn't get done in 2021. Because if we consider what he got offered in 133 a low ball amount, then what would he have got offered in 2021 when Josh Allen got his deal? See, I believe certainly as sure as I'm doing this video, if Lamar had been offered the Josh Allen deal, 6 years, 258 with 150 guaranteed, he would have signed that. And now we would be talking about a restructuring of his contract to create cap space to bring more free agents in. rather than him being franchise tagged and having a $32 million cap hit that can't be lowered or anything. You see, this was an EDC doing. You see, you had all those guys under the Ravens organization signed. 470 million is what their total contracts were. And then the kicker is the Josh Allen contract. And see, these are real numbers. This is not stuff I'm making up. This is what you can see. And so what we do know is that Lamar Jackson was offered less, more recent than Josh Allen was offered 2 years ago. Why would Lamar Jackson sign that? And so when we're mad at Lamar, right? When we're mad at Lamar Jackson, it seems a little invalid. Because if I've done more than that, see, don't give me Josh Allen had more playoff success. Josh Allen also had a better offensive coordinator and he had better weapons. Okay? So don't give me Josh Allen's playoff success because Josh Allen still doesn't have an MVP. And it's one thing to be in the conversation, it's another thing to win it. And then it's another thing to be in the playoffs but never win a championship. And and the point is, at the time that this contract was signed, the Josh Allen contract, Lamar had already done more than Josh Allen with less. So why would I back off if I'm Lamar? Why would I back off my contract demands if I watched everybody else in the organization get paid and then people outside of the organization get paid and it's not even what I was offered? See, so it's not Steve Bisciotti or Stevie B. It's not John Harbaugh and it's not Lamar Jackson. It's EDC and his decision making when it comes to dealing out contracts. Because what he would have known with every contract that he signed off on or that he gave out is that I have a young quarterback who already has an MVP under his belt. He would know that I have not done him justice with the lack of talent at the wide receiver position. And he's done nothing more than carry the entire team. Because even with those big signings on defense, they still didn't rise to a top 5 defense. So listen, that's my take, man. Let me know what you guys want me to know, man. I put 95% of this blame for this current debacle on the shoulders of EDC. I showed you the contracts that he signed, knowing that Lamar Jackson was coming due. I showed you the Josh Allen contract and how Lamar Jackson's more recent, not most recent, but more recent contract of $133 million guaranteed was even less than what Josh Allen was given 2 years ago. And that's what has led us here. So that's my take, man. Please hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. I'm your guy Boulanger. This is the GM, and I'm out.